Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Maxwell show. Today is going to be really, really great because I have the honor in interviewing Mr. Michael Bowen. I reached out to Michael Bowen a couple weeks ago. He's the one of the co-founders of Free Black Thought. So I'm just going to read right here. Free Black Thought is a small group of scholars, technologists, parents, and above all, American citizens determined to amplify vital Black voices that are rarely heard on mainstream platforms. As citizens, we pursue no political agenda other than a commitment to free speech, civil rights, and a conviction that a pluralistic society committed to liberal democracy is nourished by the entire spectrum of Black thinking on matters of politics, society, and culture. And I think it was particularly great that I had Mr. Bowen on here during Black History Month, just so we can show people that there are some of us with slightly different opinions. To go in more depth of Mr. Bowen, he is one of the co-founders and co-editors of Free Black Thought, business intelligence professional, a data engineer, past contributor to the NPR, did not know that, Cafe Utne, I hope I pronounced that right, Young Republicans in TV One, an essayist at Stoic Observations. So Michael Bowen, I appreciate you for coming on my show today.
Good to be here, Mr. Maxwell. Call me Mike anyway.
Mike.
Yeah. So
I guess I want to know how did you start with Free Black Thought? What was your experience? I guess coming up did you always have this kind of way of thinking? Did you come from a more, I guess you would say, a more radical viewpoint early in your life? I want to know about that. How did you come to this spot?
Sure. I'm a big brother, oldest of 5 kids in a big family, a very tight knit family, and my father was a Connecticut Yankee. He also was in the Marine Corps, and he's also a Black nationalist. My mother is from New Orleans. She was a lapsed Catholic, and both of them met. They both studied sociology in college, and it was a brand new field. And while they were very young, they got involved in radical politics. They were radicals, but they were not militants. My dad was kind of a scholarly sort, and he got published with essays, and he talked to folks, and he was basically one of the intellectual Black nationalists who wanted to say, hey, look, America's no good for Black folks. We need to leave. And I also have family who are actually originally with the Peace Corps. The original Peace Corps worked with the Kennedy administration, my late uncle. And his immediate family went to live and work with him in West Africa. And just I've always had those role models, and they were always intellectual. And I was encouraged, to be a writer, to be a thinker. And I kind of perceived the world from this moral framework of, I was born when there were no Black people. We were all Negroes back then. And then there was this crazy movement in the 60s that said, we have to move away from the old ways of thinking. And my father was part of that. Long story short, I grew up as one of the original kids celebrating Kwanzaa, gave up Christmas to celebrate Kwanzaa, had, those participants in the early days, including, Ron Karenga and Dr. Lagan, who opened, the largest and first Black bookstore in LA. These were personal friends of the family. So we were on that radical leading edge. And when things started getting really ugly, my father had to make a choice. He says, do I want to be this radical? Do I want to put my family in jeopardy? Or can I do something else? And he decided to do something else. He joined public health. He worked for the County of Los Angeles Health Department. helped establish, Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital in Willowbrook, in the ashes of where the Watts riots were. And so, I've always had this sense of a public service. What am I going to do as I step into this role? I'm supposed to be in the talented 10th. And so, that was how I started off. And as I tried to do those things and grew up, I learned some hard lessons about who I thought I was as a Black person and who Black people think they are. And it led to some very interesting discoveries.
So how much would you say your father was an influence on just the way you thought, like a major influence?
Yes, starting off. But on the other hand, I never always wanted to be, a social worker or a community organizer. I was into science. I was into cars. I was into, he was a radio man in the Corps. So he taught me how to read schematic diagrams. So I'm a kid. I said, oh, this is a resistor. This is a capacitor. And one of the interesting things that he did is, like, on the back of our old RCA TV, it says, only to be fixed by experienced personnel. Don't try this at home. But he taught me how to fix the tubes on the TV. And so I went through that barrier of, oh, this is what ordinary people can't do. And my dad just showed me how to do something extraordinary. So I think, like every boy who loves their father, that's the kind of typical thing. But also in the neighborhood, it was like, oh, your dad's a good man. So there was a certain amount that I wanted to be like him. But then there were things I said, well, I'm going to do things different, when I grow up. And certainly that was true for, a choice of careers, what I wanted to do. And I didn't think I'd want to have 5 kids either.
So I guess what I really want to get to is I want to know how important you think, freedom of thought and freedom of Black thought is, not even just really just for Black people, just for everyone. Because what I'm picking up on is, you kind of had that natural inclination to think for yourself, despite, your father's nationalistic beliefs. You kind of just had that natural urge to want to think for yourself. So, and I've had a similar journey. We'll get into that as the discussion goes on. But I want to know from you, how important do you think it is for 2 questions? How important was it for you to deviate from the way, your father thought and develop your own kind of viewpoint on the world? And how important do you think it is for other people to not just take because basically we're a product of our parents to a certain extent. What our parents put us through, if they went to church, we went to church. If they didn't, then we didn't. If they gave up Kwanzaa, they gave up Christmas, then we gave it up. How important do you think it is to, and not in like an honorary, like a purposeful, like a rejection of what your parents do, not anything like that, but how important do you think it is for people to develop their own way of thinking and not succumb to, some group or what some other person's just telling them what to do? How important do you think that is for people, especially today, now?
It's absolutely crucial. There's nothing more bizarre that I see and hear all the time are entertainments and productions and mouthing off where they expect that if you watch this, you're going to get self-esteem, or we are going to empower you. Nothing could be further from the truth. You have to get up on a skateboard and try to learn the trick and fall on your butt and get up and try it again. There's something you have to do for yourself that nobody else can make you do. And if you don't ever get the confidence to do that, then you won't have the confidence to think for yourself in any point in life. You'll be like the person that says, okay, I'll be the crazy one in this relationship. And you become a dependent person. And it is important throughout all time for people to be independent, meaning I have to look out for myself. I have to know myself. I have to control myself I have to master myself. And when you become self-possessed, then you can do anything you set your mind to without encouragement. You just have to be able to think for yourself and do for yourself. And, everybody knows the Bible verse, God helps those who help themselves. But the devil helps those who want to control you when you're not thinking for yourself. So any identity that you take on, you have to remember your name. If you've got a middle name, my name is Michael David Cobb Bowen, then you have to be that. You have to be the only one. And there's nothing to substitute for that. If you don't have it, you'll be searching for it the rest of your life. So you got to get out there and do something where you build something. Maybe you build a model airplane, or maybe you grow some collard greens in your backyard, or you learn how to do a backward somersault. Something you have to do that you know is uniquely yours. You own it. And your whole personality can come from that. Now, of course, you have to learn how to deal with other people, but you also have to feel worthy of dealing with other people. So you have to get self-mastery. And this is a country that wants you to do that will not respect you if you don't do it. So it's more than just good for yourself. It's good for the whole society to be able to respect individuals for who they are. And you just can't jump on a bandwagon and says, yeah, I'm just like all the rest of them,
Yeah. I'm glad you said it's good for the society, because I think a common critique of what you're basically describing is an individualism. A common critique of that is, oh, well, you're just selfish and all you think about is yourself and you're not concerned with the collective issues of society. And this is, I couldn't disagree more, because what better way to fix the collective issues of a society is to not increase the brain power of the individuals. It's the individuals that go out and start things like Free Black Thought. It's the individuals that go out and create these organizations and create these technologies that can then provide for the collective. Because 9 out of 10 people, they're not. The average IQ in the United States is 98. The average person isn't going out and fixing a freaking whatever those two words you said. Something that the average person's not going out creating something. They're not creative. They're not going out and being bold. So it's crucial that we have people like you, people like me, that have platforms that are. It's not. If it's just benefiting you, that's not the point. The point is that when you self-possessing yourself, that's not the point. Just to aggrandize yourself and be like just like this selfish tyrant. That's not the point. And I think people, they conflate those two things. You change the world. If you can't even change yourself, how are you going to go out and change the world? It doesn't make any sense.
Right. It doesn't.
And when I hear people critique, individualism like that, it's just, I can't help but, and I understand it, because the average person isn't that bright. The average person isn't going out and doing things for themselves and trying to think of new solutions. Here's my theory of how these things propagate. Because think about, you have we're tribal creatures. That's how we originated. All tribes are fragmented individuals. They're incomplete people. They're widgets. They're pieces of a puzzle. A one puzzle piece can't go out and change the world. So they have no choice but to get together and form this kind of like amalgamation of a pseudo person. And that's where you get activism from. That's where you get these little tribes, these little ideological tribes. And when we have the scheme set up in that way, well, there is no discussion. There is no getting anywhere. It's just, well, I have my arbitrary beliefs, and then these people have their arbitrary beliefs, and then we're just fighting. And so, one of us loses an eyeball. It doesn't make any sense. And I think what happens is someone has to step outside of that group and say, okay, and be the leader. If we all just get in these tribes and we all just have a strictly collectivist ideology, nothing's going to get done. We're going to be going in a circle, and that's what we're seeing right now. No one wants to be a leader, because the second you step out of that damn group, you're shot. And that's gonna be my next question. I'm gonna get fired up in this interview because I have a lot to talk to you about. Skinfolk, all skinfolk isn't kinfolk. Please explain to for anyone that's watching this who might not know what that means. I'm sure you've heard that beaucoup of times. What does that mean?
Well, I think this applies to a lot of Black Americans, which is, did you grow up in a Black neighborhood? If you grew up in a Black neighborhood, it was probably because there was some kind of segregation in force. All right. I did. And my neighbors next door were from Texas. The guy across the street was from Texas.
I'm sorry, where did you grow up again? I'm sorry.
I grew up in LA in the infamous Crenshaw district.
Okay.
And West Africa. Which is, by the way, a Black and Japanese neighborhood when I was growing up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but the guy next door was a reverend, older man, never came outside the house without a suit and a hat on, drove a Lincoln Continental, got a new one every year, white Continental. The guy next to him was a barber. He was always drunk, but we didn't know much about him. So just I could go house by house and see that people were from different religions. They were from different parts of the country to come to LA. And some of them had kids, some of them had no kids. Some of them were strictly church going. Some of them did not. And so even within that Black community, you know, oh, well, we're all here because they won't let us live over in that neighborhood. So even in your heart, you know you didn't belong there. You had to form a community out of these strangers who were there for artificial reasons because of the color of their skin. And it wasn't like your mom approved of everybody other kids on the block. It wasn't like your father had the same favorite football team as a guy across the street. It wasn't that we all worked at the same kind of jobs. So there has always been Black diversity. When we were Negroes, there was diversity. When folks decided, oh, we're going to be called Black people, there were people who said, no, don't call me Black, call me Negro. Okay. And then when some people went there, they said, no, don't even call me Christian. I'm not even going to be a Christian. I'm going to be a Muslim. I'm going to be Black Muslim. So you can't assume that this racial definition is really close to your heart. You can adopt it, if you feel like a lost stepchild, you can adopt some ideology, but there is no single Blackness. There is no single Black community. And you can learn it the easy way just by identifying who you are as a person, not saying as a Black man, and then say the same thing everybody else says.
Jesus Christ.
Right? You could just say, I, as Mike Bowen, who grew up in LA during the 60s and 70s, who went to Catholic school, who rode a skateboard, who did this kinds of things.
Okay.
There's so many things about you that make you different.
Yeah.
That
so
you
I want to
racial definitions.
I want to steelman that what you just said, because I feel as if, and I've seen this a lot. I've heard it a lot. A lot of Black people nowadays, they can't get away from that group identity. They can't get away from that because they invested so much of who they are into this group that just even the thought of not saying as a Black man or not saying as a woman of color, some people cannot process that. So what if my sole identity is as a Black man? Because I think some people will listen to what you just said and they'll be like, oh, well, what's he talking about? Me being Black is my identity. Like I am. Like I can't. Some people can't separate their identity from who they are. So what would you say to that person or a woman who will say, okay, well, Mike, I hear you, but how I think, what I believe is because of my skin color. My skin color is an important part of who I am. What would you say to that person?
All right, so I want you to follow me on this imaginary conspiracy theory. And here's the conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory is that every book on that shelf that was written by a Black author when they were telling you about themselves and their lives has been read by the Ku Klux Klan. All right? And if it had something positive, then they burned it. And they burned it 100 years ago, and none of them survived. All right? So now, if you go and get a book, let's say here, a typical one, Black Skin, White Mask by Frantz Fanon. A lot of people read this book. Somehow in this, the white supremacist said, oh, he's going to make Black people think less of themselves, so we'll leave this one on the shelf. And that conspiracy means all your Black identity is constrained by white supremacy. And they're saying you can't even learn anything that makes you as good as white people. But that didn't happen. You can read 100 Black books and you are liberated 100 different ways because we don't all think the same. So the question is, are you just going to let, your homies, your family determine everything that you are? I mean, why go to school? Why think? You have to open up your mind and accept that there's a possibility of a new you that you just don't know yet. And you can't wait for somebody to make a movie about it because movies are expensive to make. But the books, they have that. The music, it's out there. But if you listen to the same music as everybody else, I mean, how old is Snoop Dogg? How long has he still been singing that same song? You've got to go out and find culture. You have to go out and find work. You have to go out and find ways to be useful in the world. And if you don't, then you just stay at home, stay in your same neighborhood, sit on the same corner, sit on the same block, tell the same jokes. Remember that joke Richard Pryor said, oh, white people do this, Black people do that. Yeah, you're just repeating the same thing. You're not taking advantage of your own mind, your own body, your own diet, your own look. I mean, why? If you want to behave like a sheep, then you'll be treated like a sheep. You want to be bold out there and doing stuff that's new to yourself. That's how you grow. Otherwise, you stay in the same place.
Mic drop. Jesus, man. I agree 100% with what you just said, and I really feel sorry for people who listen to that and just can't, and they can't separate their identity from who they are. Their skin color, another one is their sexuality, which is another weird one that's been coming up.
You know who is great on this? There's a guy named David Goggins. I don't know if you've heard of David Goggins.
Yeah,
I've heard of him.
Goggins blows all that out the way. He just blows it up. But he says everybody is a little messed up. Everybody is a little bit of a hot mess. So don't pretend that you're not. But you have to face that hot mess and say, maybe I can get 1% better. Dude was what, 300 pounds? Wanted to be a Navy SEAL, couldn't run a whole lap around the track. He said, maybe I'll take 500 steps today, 510 steps tomorrow. Maybe I'll do 1 push-up today, 2 push-ups next week. Everybody can do a little bit better, but you have to make yourself useful. And when you make yourself useful, somebody will say, oh, you helped me. I couldn't have done that without you. And then you will find your value. Well, no matter what kind of individual you are, if you see somebody in trouble who can't do something that you can do, you can help them. And if they're a decent human being, they'll say, thank you. I couldn't have done that without you. And that's how everything begins. Everything begins with finding out how you are valuable to other people. And you can't be helpful to other people if you're just reciting the same thing. If you're just reciting the same lyrics to the same song that everybody already knows. You got to say something new. You got to improvise. You got freestyle.
That's what I think is that lack of creativity, is that lack of courage that would even compel someone to even want to look out, because that requires humility. You're saying, okay, and I need to figure out how I'm valuable to other people. That requires humility. That requires a certain bit of intellect. That requires you to actually think that you have something to offer. And I want to get to the next point because it's related. There's been, I don't know how long this has been. Maybe you know more about this than I do, but there's been a lot of talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and the inclusion. I want to talk about this. I feel as if, and I want to know your opinion on this. I don't understand why certain black people think that when they apply for these positions as a diversity instructor or a diversity, leader, why do they think that they're doing something? They're doing something productive. Why do they think that them being hired by a white person to be the literal puppet of their organization? Why do they think that they're doing something productive? Because I've looked on people's social medias, and there's this, I'm not going to say her name, even though I would like to. I seen she was on her story, and this girl was going through these creative agencies. What's it called? When they have like their employees on the display, like they have like their team members, and she was like, "Oh, there's no black people here." She's like, "Oh, where's the black people? Where's the black people?" And then a few months later, now she's the head diversity of a white company. It's like, I don't understand. So you looked on their website, you've seen that they didn't have any black people, and then you get hired. And now you're the voice. Like, what? They already showed you that they didn't. I mean, I care if I'm wrong. If that organization didn't have any black people there, why do you think that you were the exception? Like, why do those people think that once they get hired, why do they think that that's a step in the right direction?
Yeah.
Like, if it's not there already, why do you think you're helping? How are you helping? And I think that whole way of thinking.
I hear you. I have a theory, and my theory is kind of harsh, but what we're seeing right now is Blaxploitation 2. Blaxploitation 2.0.
Yeah, I agree.
Because when I was growing up, when there were Bruce Lee movies, there was also Blaxploitation movies. All right, so you had Shaft, The Mask, Three the Hard Way, Cleopatra Jones, and we were like, look at all these black movies. Every movie that we've seen up to now was white movies, and now we have black people in movies, but they were all of a stereotype, right?
Yes.
So these actors probably could have done any number of things. They probably could have done Shakespeare. They probably could have done Amiri Baraka. They probably could have done, any number of things. They probably didn't get a chance to until 1977 when Roots came out, the book, and then they made the TV series, and that was probably the biggest black TV film thing ever up until that point. But the point is, all those blaxploitation movies were a cookie cutter thing. It was the same thing. Okay, you black folks, you want to be in Hollywood? Is that what you want? Okay, we'll make a whole bunch of blaxploitation movies, and you can be the star of that movie.
Exactly.
And that's what DEI is to me. It's just blaxploitation 2.0. What do you black people want? Oh, you want to be in corporate America, but you want to go work at Ford, but you don't know anything about cars? all right, we'll have a black person. You can be the black person that knows about black people.
That's Michael. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like when they do these things and they put on their story, okay, well, they don't have any black people, so I'm going to go apply here, and then they hire them, and now they're the diversity instructor, and they're sending out memos about their steps they're taking towards creating a more inclusive. Like you're not running. You don't own anything. Like you don't own anything. You're not running anything. You're not producing anything. You're literally the token person of the organization. I don't understand why they feel more insulted of being hired as a diversity puppet as not being hired at all. I would be more offended that you reached out to me solely because I was black and you wanted me to speak for your company. How is that not more offensive?
That's what they're going to learn the hard way. Because they're going to try to be the black person that gets other black people to come into the company, and they're going to start interviewing black people and find out, well, maybe this is not the black person I want. Next.
Yeah, they're not coming to you and I.
Then they'll be kind of the gatekeeper. And there's, well, I was the first black person here, so I'm the head Negro in charge.
Yeah.
And then they're going to find all these black people maybe don't want to work for their company if they have to go through you.
Yeah, you touched on a good point earlier, and you said that your neighbor was a Texan, and your other neighbor was like I think you said he was a reverend. And you said there was all this diversity within the group, and I don't know if you know him. His name is probably know him. Have you ever heard of Jordan Peterson?
George Pearson?
Jordan Peterson.
Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
That's my guy. And so I guess I have to give you kind of backstory. I come from a very, very, very woke background. Just 2 years ago, before the we're going to get into all this. I don't want to spoil it. So long story short, I used to be woke. I stopped being woke just 2 years ago. And the one video I watched of Jordan that just completely just changed my mind. It's very rare you watch one video that completely changes your whole entire life. That's very rare. So I'm blessed to even have that as an experience. He was talking about our group identity and racism and all this stuff, and he said this one sentence. He said, in fact, the very idea that there are more differences between groups than within groups is the fundamental racist idea. And when you said that your neighbor was this way and your other neighbor was this way, and there was so much diversity within the black community, and there really is no such thing as a homogenous black community, I couldn't help but think towards what Jordan said. That is the case. If you think that there was more differences between me and an Asian man than there is between me and you, then that is the actual fundamental idea of how the actual definition of racism, not the 2020 definition. The actual idea. The idea that I am superior, I am more superior than you because of the color of my skin. That is the actual definition. That is the root of that whole entire ideology. And what I can't understand is that when and to go back to the DEI stuff, when they do get hired, you said it yourself. This is the most stereotypical black person, big afro, glasses, just a stereotypical person. And I can't help but, and you talk about black exploitation, it's just like, I can't help but just piece all these things together, and how can someone not look at all this and be like, maybe this is not right? Well, what are we overlooking? So I don't even know if that was even a question, but that was more I guess a comment. But it's really something really weird that's going on. And I alluded to a point. I'm going to be all over the place. This is my interviewing style. This is how I talk. I want to talk about the whole Black Lives Matter stuff 2 years ago, and I want to talk about all that stuff. So what exactly were you doing when just 2 years ago when these people were going out and burning down buildings and just going insane? What was going on through your mind, and what were you doing? How did you think about all that? And how did you see the shift? There's a gigantic shift. And I was one of those people, and not burning down buildings, but I was one of those people who succumbed to. I believed in the white privilege. I believed in all the diktats of the leftism. I believed in all of it. So, what was your thoughts of how you were seeing people become so polarized and the black squares? I want to know your opinion on all that.
I have a joke, but actually, I was asking my brother what kind of rifle I should buy. Because I live in LA. I actually live in a gated community. And so I said, oh, okay, well, I don't have to buy a very powerful rifle, but I'm already a shooter. But seriously, you know, marching in the streets is an old idea. Black protests in the streets is an old idea.
Yeah.
It's a rehash. And marching in the streets is not what changed the Negro to the black man. When in 1960 there were 20 million Negroes, most of them lived in poverty. By 2000, there was something like 38 million, and mostly middle class. Everybody wasn't marching all those ways. Nobody ever gave me a check at the end of a march, and I've been doing those. Now there's more people graduating from what we used to call predominantly white universities than HBCUs. All right.
Wow.
There's 3 times as many black people in college, black men in college, than in jail. But you still keep these stereotypes as if we're not free. We have to get out there and make some noise and raise a ruckus.
3 times the amount
of black men in jail are in college.
Yeah, there's 3 times the number of black men are in college than in jail.
Wow.
Yeah. But when do you see movies all the time about black men in jail? But you don't see many movies about black men in college. So you just have to know that fact and not wait for Hollywood to make a movie about it and publicize that fact. So you just had, and an interesting story was when the Million Man March came out, a lot of people said, oh, you're going to spend all this money on white hotels and white airlines and white buses to drive across the country and pay white gas stations.
What is that? The Million Man March.
Yeah, the Million Man March.
What was that?
Inform me.
I've
heard the name,
but I don't.
Yeah, somewhere around the late 80s, early 90s, Minister Farrakhan, who was the leader of the Nation of Islam, put together something called a Million Man March on Washington. And the idea was you get all these black men to make some kind of pledge that they were going to be better men. And so some researchers at Howard found out, and the major criticism against this was, well, why are you spending money on this march? You should be spending money on education. You should be, if we had 1 million people give $100 to the United Negro College Fund, that would be a much better spend of our money. So you had 3 researchers go and figure out the demographics of the people that showed up.
Yeah.
And they found that about 40% of them were already college graduates. So if you had 400,000 men who had already successfully graduated from college, how much money was that? Nobody even gave anybody, there was like, give me $100 for my college scholarship. I said, fool, my parents already put me through college. I already earned a scholarship through college. I already spent $50,000 on college and I graduated successfully, been there, done that. You're pretending like I don't exist. You're pretending like I'm just a fool. So people don't take seriously a lot of black accomplishment that has already happened.
Yeah.
But they want to talk about black history of slavery. They want to talk about black history of victimization. They say, you're suppressing black history. White people should know about slavery. I'm like, when has that information been suppressed? All right. How many black books are on your shelf? What do you know? You're not an expert about history or Black history or American history.
Yeah.
Maybe if you have a degree in history, you're at the beginning. So people have to stop making a habit of second guessing Black people.
Yeah.
All right. The people out there rioting, they're rioting. All right. Everybody who's clashing with a policeman on the street wants to be there. But that ain't most of us. That's just a small fraction of us. And even the ones that get shot and die, all right, which is maybe 200, 300 a year, maybe one every day, that's a very small fraction of the ones that actually get arrested peacefully, go to trial, and maybe get convicted or maybe not. So why make a big deal about this small fraction? Why make a hero out of George Floyd? Why leave your house and put yourself at risk for this symbol? It doesn't make sense.
This thing was going through my mind when I was coming out of wokeness, and you kind of alluded to it. I couldn't help but think that, was that whole entire Black Lives Matter riot, was that whole entire thing, was that like do you think it was like a nostalgia for the civil rights era? Or do you think it was a mixture of people who maybe knew some things about it and mixed with older adults who probably were at the actual protests, like the whatever this one we're talking about? Do you think it was like a kind of like a romanticism about activism and marching in the street, having that just being superficial? Like, do you think that played a major contributing part? Because what I didn't understand when I started to come out of this, and I'm hearing things about we're oppressed and this, that, and this and that. I'm like, okay, we have Black doctors, or Black politicians. Like 70% of the NFL is Black. Probably like another 80 or 70% of the NFL is Black. We have Black leaders. We've had a Black president elected twice. Show me in any dimension where Black people are purposely being taken out, or purposely not giving an opportunity. There isn't one sector in the entire Western Hemisphere of the world that you can look at and say, okay, Black people are purposely not being allowed in these particular things. And when we hear people get on the internet and we say, oh, or like there's a thing going on with, a mortgage, like a bank will charge a Black family slightly more than like a credit than they would charge a white family. And when we get into the specifics, even still you have to go down to, okay, well, I've had some friends and they were college kids and they do actuaries and they work with they didn't work in the banks, but they study how these things are set up, like your loans, or what kind of risk and calculations these people set up. And what they told me was, okay, well the Black people don't pay their damn loans. Like they don't, that you have to, like, one of the risks that are calculated inside of a bank giving you a loan for a house or giving you a loan for a car or whatever. So one of the risks that are calculated inside is your skin color, because you have shown them that this particular demographic is not paying their damn loans on time. So even when you get into the specifics, it's like, how do you even get around that? When you look at like the literacy rate, I think this is something that I learned, I think it was last year. Like in LA, in your own city, I think 90% of the black kids are completely illiterate. Is that because of the white supremacists? Why is that? Let's get into the actual stats here. You said that there's 3 times the amount of people that are in HBCUs and in prison. Is that what are we going to do with that stat? There's another stat in the FBI. This was a statistic that was around on Twitter, and everyone was getting pissed off about it. The black on black crime is 78% of the crimes that are committed, of the murders by black people are intraracial. We have the highest intraracial murder rate in the entire country. Why is that? Let's get into that. Let's get into the actual facts. So what do you think when you think people are presented with these facts? How do they get around that? What is the getting around when we stop looking at these marches and we stop talking about these freaking black squares and let's get into the actual stats? We have black lawyers, we have black doctors, we have black business owners, we have we have 15 black billionaires. Not 15, I think it's probably like 10. Oh, what about Oprah Winfrey? What about Dr. Dre? What about Jay-Z? What about Sean Combs? What about I'm sorry, I can't I didn't see who that was. My eyes are kind of
Tiger Woods.
Yeah. What about Tiger Woods? What about Kanye West? What about Michael Jordan? What about all these people who are successful, who are billionaires, who own businesses, who employ millions of people? Why are we overlooking all this stuff? Are they just like?
I'll tell you why.
You're undermining our success. You're undermining all the progress that we made when you overlook all these facts.
Mm-hmm. I believe it's my parents' fault. And that's because both of my parents were sociologists. All right. So they were among the first graduates in this new field called sociology, where they thought that you can describe the health of the country or the nature of the country with statistics.
Yeah, that's an abysmal even field
right?
I mean,
so there's so many people who start looking at black people from the point of view of statistics rather than as people. All right. And that's just a step in the wrong direction to begin with. All right. I'd rather be associated with jazz music. I'd rather be associated with swimming because I was a swimmer. I grew up at the beach. I know how to surf. My daughter knows how to surf. There's so many things about me that are interesting that may never get talked about, but my family knows me, and I'm a data engineer. I know what it means to put 20 different attributes in a table. The more things I put in that table, the more expensive it is to know. So as a banker, when I'm calculating your FICO score, I only want the least amount of information I need to know about you as a person so I can come up with your FICO score. And just as you were saying, if you're not paying your phone bill or you're not paying off your credit cards, that's all I need to know. That's the difference between now with computers and back then with redlining. Because now I can calculate your entire credit history, everything you ever spent and every payment you ever made in a fraction of a second. That is how long it takes for me to calculate your FICO score. And I do it once a month. That much computing, and I send you a new number. That much. All right. That's not like the old days when you would get up, put on your best shirt and tie, and go down to the bank officer and ask for a loan and have a personal conversation. Now, you don't rank a personal conversation anymore. We just have you in your computer as a statistic. And so, yes, it is true. There is a world where you are an abstract thing, and there's people who want to attach your race to that. They want to put your race in a computer, and they won't ever get to know all these other things about you. I'll tell you right now, there's just a whole industry of data scientists, and I'm part of that industry, who never see you. They just know that you spend X amount of hours in front of your smartphone and you see the world through this phone. And they will do what they need to do to capture your attention and sell you stuff.
The idea that your race matters, you can hold that to be true, but as you're saying, in the actual real world, it's far from the reality.
Yes, it is. And even if that becomes the entire reality of America, what's it like in Mexico? What's it like in the UK? What's it like in Spain? What's it like in Thailand or Australia? If you never go those places, if you never think, oh, geez, I don't know, a black man could never live in Australia. Of course they can. A black man could never live in Europe. Of course they can. All right. Kids that I grew up with in my old neighborhood, almost none of them went to college. A lot of them, it's interestingly enough, about half went to law enforcement and the military. The other half went to jail. And some went to college. But one of them, who was a kid named Donald, was a mechanical genius. And we built dirt bikes together. We built dirt bikes, we built skateboards, and he was really good. And I was short. I couldn't play basketball. I couldn't dunk, even on a 9-foot rim. But I was good mechanically. And he came back to the city about 4 years ago. I said, "Where you been, man? It's been a long time." He said, "Oh yeah, I was a truck mechanic in Australia. I lived in Melbourne for 12 years." "Really? Well, that's just 12 years. Where'd you go after that?" "Oh, I lived in Switzerland. I lived in a town north of Geneva. I'm forgetting the name of it now. Basel." Dude lived in Basel, Switzerland. And then my other neighbor, who was all my same age, he went and lived in Idaho, and he went and lived in Philadelphia. So just kids from my own block went all around the country, all around the world, and had very different and interesting lives. And I was like, oh, so you got to get out of your old hood, because everybody knows it's like Compton. But even if you go to every other ghetto in the U.S., it's different. If you go to the Fifth Ward of Houston, that's different than Compton. If you go to Brownsville in Brooklyn, that's different. That's a different kind of ghetto. So even every ghetto is different. If you go to Birmingham, Alabama, it's crazy down there. But it's different every place. And so Black Americans are distributed all over the place. We're not even in the same neighborhoods we were in 50 years ago. All right. There's some that are still, you say, oh, yeah, that's still a Black neighborhood, but that's changing. Everything's changing. People are moving. All right. Once upon a time in the 40s, we couldn't go anywhere. You had to stay with the Black group because America, but mostly the South, was segregated. Well, nobody's stopping you at the border. All right. You drive your car across the border. You go to Vegas, you go to Arizona, you go where you want to go. Well, what's stopping you? What's stopping you? To meet some new people, get some more numbers in your phone book. All right. Now you have the whole internet, but you're not actually moving anywhere, but you have the chance to get opinions and information and knowledge from all over the world. All right. It's not like you can say, oh, I live in a Black neighborhood. They don't put enough books in our library. We'll never learn anything.
Excuse me.
You can get it. You can get as much as you want, much knowledge as you're willing to be bold enough and have enough courage to put into your noggin. And they can never take that away from you. So do it. Become bigger. The only thing stopping you is you.
Wow. That sounds like a great place to stop. Michael, I appreciate it. This was really great.
I'm glad talking to you, Kyle. This is cool.
Yeah, I have one last question for you, and this is kind of selfish, but just looking at the culture today, what is your best advice for? I guess I have to say Black people now. For Black people, what is actually, never mind, that's a corny question. What do you think is the number one problem within Black people as of 2022? What do you think the number one problem is, and what's your solution? That's going to be my last question for you.
I think I'll have to go back to Jordan Peterson. I think Black people think that their psychology is different than white people. They think their psychology, that they're they're actually a different kind of human being. They think that they're hard, that they can't be insulted. They think if a white person calls them nigger, it's more hurtful than if a Black person calls them nigger. And if you grew up in a house where your parents called you a nigger, then you have some psychological damage. And maybe you're not addressing it. Or if you call your children that, maybe you're not addressing it. So you have to accept that you are a psychologically human being, and the rules of psychology are the same for everybody else. So if you know you're a hot mess and you're dealing with people who are a hot mess, you need to get some counseling. You need to get some life coaching, and stop pretending that you're immune, or that you're not sensitive, or that you're not smart, or that you're not worthy. You have to treat yourself like the human being you really want to be treated. And that black stuff can't get in the way. You'll be chasing black fantasies your whole life, and then they'll change, and then you'll be, where will you be? All right. Everybody was Afrocentric in 1994. What happened to that? Nobody's Afrocentric anymore. Nobody's talking about Malefe Asante and Afrocentricity and Kemet and all that Hotep stuff. These are just fashions. But human nature is real. It's permanent. You're a human being. Start treating yourself like a human being, and other people will treat you like a human being.
Amen. Michael, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.